Fiverr. For those of you who don't know what Fiverr is, if you haven't seen our ads around town, thank you. We are a global marketplace for digital services for entrepreneurs and small businesses who need to get stuff done. Pretty simple. I want to thank General Assembly for letting us hold this event here and tell you a little bit about General Assembly really quickly. General Assembly is a pioneer in education and career transformation, specializing in today's most in-demand skills in business, tech, design, and data. The leading source for training, staffing, and career transitions, General Assembly fosters a flourishing community of professionals pursuing careers they love. So for coming tonight, you can visit General Assembly/education, that's GENERASSEMB.LY/education, and apply the code GOGASF, so go GASF for go GASF25 for a 25% discount on General Assembly classes. So go ahead and check that out. I also want to thank 4 Point Beer Company for providing the beer. I can recommend the KSA. It's fantastic. You should try it. And I want to thank the panelists, who we'll hear from in a couple of minutes. But before that, we're lucky to have a special conversation with Carla Marinucci from Politico and Congressman Khanna from California's 17th Congressional District. So without further ado,
hear us now? It's okay? Thanks for having us, Fiverr. It's wonderful to be here. And thank you, Congressman Khanna, a brand new father of a 3-year-old boy. Congratulations there. Well, I write the Politico California Playbook, a daily digest for Politico, and this gentleman is regularly featured in it as somebody who's, your town halls are probably the most packed as any I've seen anywhere around the country. People show up and there are real discussions that go on.
People are engaged.
You just had one. Yeah, they're very engaged. And so there's lots to talk to them about. I'm going to give a couple minutes at the end for questions, so if you want to prepare something, we'll let a couple of you get some time in because his time is short. But let me start with something that the Trump administration proposed this week. When we talk about entrepreneurs and small business, particularly in this state, we talk about immigrants. And the Trump immigration policy proposed this week sharply reduces legal immigrants and caps refugees. Just give us your thoughts. As you're from a family of immigrants,
right?
How is this going to change the small business environment, the fabric of California? What is this going to do to what America is?
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up, Carla. It's great to do this panel with you. You know, we're lucky to have someone from the Bay Area who's now a national star in reporting. And thank you, Buffy, for inviting me and coming up with this idea. You know, this bill is so wrong-headed, not just from a moral basis, but from an economic basis. And if you look at what the bill does, it says people can't, if they come here, they can't bring or sponsor their brothers or their parents or their adult children. As if when people immigrate, they just come to work and don't care about their families. One of the reasons people come to the United States, the best and the brightest, is because they think that they'll have a better life for their families. You're not going to get the Elon Musks if you say just come and work, but don't bring anyone else. And you know what would happen is people may come here and then they'll probably go back to the countries that they came from. So you're actually discouraging wealth and job creation in the United States. And then the other thing it does is by putting this salary cap, basically it's saying if you are working in the hotel industry, or you're working in farming, or you're doing the jobs of manual labor, then we don't want you here. Here's what I don't understand. I mean, the president made his whole campaign saying, I'm not just for the Ivy League, I'm not for the elites, I'm for the little guy, the person who works his way up. Well, that's the immigrant story. Those are the immigrants he's saying shouldn't be here and shouldn't contribute. And he wants government to decide who's going to make a contribution to the United States. And we've all heard stories of people who didn't speak English and who came here and who did great things. So it's just it's a wrong-headed bill that hurts our economic competitiveness.
Is he going to get to the floor? of anywhere.
I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because the Republicans understand. Some of the Republicans understand too that this is just going to. Lindsey Graham was speaking out against it because it's going to hurt his state. It's going to hurt the economy. Carly, you know that the single biggest reason for America's economic growth between 1950 and today was women entering the workforce. That's that's documented. It's uncontested. That's what increased our labor supply. That's what led to growth. And we're not going to have that phenomena again. So how are you going to get economic growth? Where are you going to get a bigger labor supply?
And, and we've got a lot of folks in this audience, obviously, who have either just come out of college, you can see, or, benefited from affirmative action policies.
Yes.
You've heard what Trump has had to say on this week, that they have disproportionately affected white Americans. Your views on that?
Well, first of all, the Supreme Court just affirmed in Fisher affirmative action as constitutional. So he's trying to relitigate something that a conservative Supreme Court has affirmed. And the point that they have said is, given historical, systematic discrimination in communities, we need to consider that as a factor in getting people the opportunities that they deserve. Ta-Nehisi Coates, I don't know if anyone has read him, has really documented the impact of Jim Crow and slavery on communities and the systematic wrong that was done. And instead of relitigating affirmative action, what I'd like to see is greater investment in HBC universities, greater investment in communities that have been excluded from the new economy. So it's just politics, but it's totally ignorant of history.
I mean, let's talk about that. Fiverr did this great survey on entrepreneurship in America and some of the policies affecting small business and entrepreneurs. Let's talk about some of their concerns, because you've been dealing with some of these in Congress. Single biggest concern listed is the access to capital, particularly to startups, access to capital as they develop. What can Congress do? What can the government do? What have you been working on with regard to helping these small businesses get what they need?
Well, the access to capital is so concentrated, right? We've got 3 states which get 90% of the venture capital: California, Massachusetts, and New York. And then it's not diverse. It's not giving people a chance. And by diverse, I mean, yes, gender diversity and racial diversity, but also diversity of, you can do things if you didn't go to Stanford, or you didn't go to Harvard, or you didn't work at Apple. But there's this mentality. And it's understandable. People associate with people who have a similar background. And so how do we get the investments in venture capital into areas not Silicon Valley, whether that's Appalachia, whether it's Detroit, whether it's Oakland, whether it's Youngstown? How do we get more people participating in the 21st century economy? To me, that was the whole 2016 election. Some people said, look, we've got the most innovative, dynamic place. And the 21st century is going to be this extraordinary century. And the other half of people said, well, we're not part of that. How do we become part of that? That's our challenge as a country.
And in the few months you've been there, you made national news with your effort in Appalachia. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? What keeps how tough is that to do? How tough is it to reach across the aisle and make those kind of initiatives happen? Just talk a little bit about what you did there.
Well, I appreciated that. And, Hal Rogers is the former chairman of the Appropriations Committee. He is a Republican, and he invited me to his district in Paintsville, Kentucky. And I think we need far more of that. I mean, his district could be more different than mine. Mine's 50% foreign born, 50% Asian American. Very diverse. We had African American community, Latino American community, Caucasian community. Hal's district, 99% Caucasian, 99% born in the U.S. His district voted for Donald Trump, 25%. He calls that area Silicon Holler. Holler is, I learned, valley between the hills, in Kentucky dialect. I was going to go down there. I asked John Yarmouth. John's the ranking member of Budget, Democrat from Louisville. So what is that district like? Tell me a little bit before I go down there. Is this Indian American guy going down from Silicon Valley? He says, I got 2 statistics for you. Barack Obama, when he ran against Hillary Clinton in 2008, lost that district 9% to 91%. And I said, he said, you may think that has something to do with race. I said, well, yeah, it may have. So I've got a second statistic for you. I said, what is that? He said, Jesse Jackson carried that district in 1988. I said, how did he do that? He said, he showed up. And I showed up, and I was greeted there with Indian food and Johnny Drum bourbon, which was 21st century Kentucky. And people were, I had an amazing reception. People were, okay, here's this guy from Silicon Valley. You probably know something about tech jobs. And you know what? They get it. They know that they need to diversify. They know that the kids there who are getting these jobs at Apple, understanding Apple iOS software and Google software and $45,000 jobs at Interapp, they wanted diversified jobs. They want to understand that, yes, they respect the tradition of coal, but they want to be part of the new economy. They want that opportunity for them and their families. And two quick points. One, we have to talk about technology's role to transform and empower communities. When John F. Kennedy went to West Virginia in 1959, the coal miners started chanting, Mr. Kennedy, go to the moon. Mr. Kennedy, we want you to go to the moon. And Kennedy talked about 30% unemployment, but they wanted to be part of the future. Well, guess what? Bernie Sanders was there in 2016, McDowell, West Virginia, talking about 30% unemployment. Now, if I was them, 50 years, 30% unemployment, I'd vote everyone out too. We have to figure out, though, what does technology offer that's different, and they got this. Hal Rogers said, look, now you can be in Paintsville, Kentucky, and you don't just have to be a coal miner or a nurse or a doctor. You can be connected with the internet and have jobs as an app developer or as a blogger or working as a sales associate while staying in Paintsville. And they want to stay in those communities. How many people here want to move to Kentucky? Well, they don't want to move to California. You know, they want to stay where they're rooted. And technology offers this possibility of these new jobs. And that's, I think, what the Democrats have to do, that we have to offer, we have to be honest. We have to say, look, we're going through a tough time, a tough transition. And maybe some of the folks are 50 or 55, we get, you're not going to go become a software engineer. That's ridiculous. I mean, I'm not going to go become a coal miner, you know, not 40. So, but what we can do is provide a safety net for you and recognize your service, and we can sure provide a real opportunity for your kids. All they want is to be part of the future, to have pride. They don't want a handout. And I think that's the aspirational message we need as a Democratic Party to contrast Trump's that the glory days are coming back again, because that's just not happening.
But, you know, there are a lot of folks here from the Valley and here from San Francisco who know the changes that are going on, this revolution, driverless cars, which the fear is they may put millions of long-haul truckers out of work. Automation in fast food, automation even in the security guard industry. What is the answer to developing some of those jobs that can take the place of the jobs that technology can do? What kind of initiatives are needed out of Congress?
Well, I think we have to look at what are the new jobs. First of all, we have to look at who's going to be displaced and be honest about it. And say we've got to find a way to make sure that they are taken care of, and that there are either they have some safety net in terms of their retirement, they have basic health care, that they have the opportunity, if they have new jobs, to be have an expanded earning tax credit so that their wages are not declining. And then we have to talk about the new jobs that will exist, because for the driverless cars, they're still going to need someone to monitor it, or to help deal with the loading and unloading, or to deal with the machinery and the technicians that are going to build the machinery. There are new jobs that are also being created, but we need to make sure people have the skills, and they're not all going to require a college degree. Some of them may require a 6-month course or a 12-week course. And we've got to be thinking about how do we rewire the labor markets for the jobs of the 21st century.
And many of the folks here too know some of the impacts of technology on their businesses and on their everyday lives. Housing is the big one. That's the one we hear about in Silicon Valley. Affordable housing, and how is Congress going to deal with that? How are we going to be able to provide the housing for workers here in our small businesses and even larger businesses?
Yeah, no, it's a big issue. I have said we have to build more affordable housing in my district in places near public transit, because right now you can't afford to live in the district if you're a young person or if you're an entrepreneur. And it'd be a very boring community if the only people who could live there are Google engineers and Apple engineers. I mean, we want teachers and we want firefighters and nurses, and we've got to have that affordable housing. We also need to make sure people's income is sufficient. So one of the proposals Sherrod Brown and I have, the expansion of the earned income tax credit, $1 trillion expansion, it would, instead of giving a $3 trillion tax cut to the shareholders and the investors, which is basically the Republican Trump plan, let's give a $1 trillion expansion to the middle working class. Between $25,000 and $75,000, you would get a 20% raise. And it would apply to people who don't have kids, because right now they aren't even covered. And a lot of them are entrepreneurs. And so if you do that, what you're saying is you will help the people whose wages have stagnated for the last 30 years have a shot at the middle class. And by the way, those are the people who are going to buy things, and which will increase consumer demand and grow the economy. One quick point on this. This is where the Democratic messaging has to change. The Republicans come out, Trump comes out and says we're going to get 3% growth. And the way we're going to get 3% growth is we're going to cut taxes on everyone, they're going to invest things, and then we're going to grow the economy at 3%. And sometimes the Democrat says, no, we're not going to get 3%, we can only get 1.9%. And then the Republicans say, well, you don't believe in American greatness. You believe in 1.9% growth. We believe in 3% growth. We're not going to win that argument. We got to say, we'll get 3% growth. Let me tell you how you do it. You get 3% growth by investing in the working class. We'll give the tax credit, tax breaks to the working families. We're going to spend it. We're going to create more jobs. We're going to do it by investing in universities and making college affordable, by investing in apprenticeships and new industries, by having Medicare for all. That's how we're going to get to 3 or 4% growth. We'll outgrow you. We're going to have a better vision for the economy, because you believe that American greatness is the elite shareholder investor class. We believe that what drives American greatness is the average American investing in them. And let's take a bet on who will grow the economy more. I think we have to have an optimistic vision for the country.
But when we talk about the Democratic message going forward, a better deal, that proposal, one of the things that's talked about, which affects a lot of small businesses, is enforcing antitrust big monopolies. Amazon has affected a lot of entrepreneurs. At the same time, we get a lot of consumers who say, hey, I don't know, I can order something on Amazon, it's cheaper, it comes to my door fast, I got a great return policy, what's the problem? Which way is it smart for the Democrats to take that kind of approach, an anti-monopoly? We get Facebook, Google, they're all in their district.
Right. Well, I think we have to look at economic concentration and the impact it has, not just on consumer prices, but on wages and jobs and local businesses. And Robert Bork in 1980 basically made antitrust law all about consumer prices. But before that, we had a tradition in this country, from FDR to Wilson to Truman, which said we have to look at all of the impacts. What's the impact of the local grocery store? What is the impact on wages? What is the impact on jobs? What is the impact on communities? And then consider all the factors and decide whether to approve a merger or not. But we want to make sure that we have a free market with multiple entrants, that we don't have a few big economically concentrated industries that are suppressing innovation for small business. And I think that that's a legitimate thing to look into.
I just got a couple more, but we just got a couple more minutes, and I'm going to take a couple of questions, but first I'm just going to ask, the one thing that Trump has promised is a tax plan and an infrastructure plan.
Right.
Where are these going to go at this point when there are so many distractions, Russia, etc.?
Well, I don't know with the infrastructure, I'm just surprised, because I thought, I disagree with Donald Trump on almost everything. I thought the one thing he really cares about is building stuff. He put the Trump name on it. I thought he'd want to rebuild airports and bridges and broadband, and that would be his legacy. And he has done nothing. If he proposed $1 trillion real infrastructure plan, he'd get Democratic support. They keep saying, oh, you want to resist. What we want to resist is stupid ideas like banning Muslims. But we don't want to resist investment. Propose things that are going to help move the country forward, and you'll get Democratic support, but he hasn't done that.
And on tax plan?
On the tax plan, they have, again, not involved any sense of democratic outreach. Have something that is reasonable, that's targeted towards middle-class families or working-class families who are not doing well. Instead, my guess is what they're going to end up coming up with is tax cuts for the very rich, because there's not going to be some comprehensive reform, because that's the only thing they can probably get the caucus to agree on. And that if you really believe that the problem in this country right now is that corporate profits aren't high enough, or that the Dow isn't doing well enough, perhaps. If you believe that what I do, that the problem in this country is we're divided by geography, that there are people and communities left behind, that the problem is jobs, that the problem is people's wages are stagnant, then that would be the wrong approach.
And of course, a lot of people here in small business are affected by the healthcare issue. The Republicans going to come back and continue to try and drive a stake in the heart of Obamacare, or are they going to work with the Democrats? How's this going to play out?
Well, I think that they've probably given up at this point, but you never know. They keep trying to repeal it. But there are things we could do. Look, the president ran on allowing for the importation of drugs. He promised that. Democrats, Peter Welch and Elijah Cummings, went to the White House and said, okay, here's the bill. We can have the importation of drugs. There would be bipartisan compromise on that. He hasn't been willing to do that. He could go after the costs. Insurance companies that we know they're denying claims. They have way too high deductibles. They're in cahoots with hospitals and how they just pay out billing. Let's go after the cost on insurance companies. Let's go after the cost with hospitals that charge facility fees. You get the same procedure at a doctor's office and you get that at a hospital. The hospital charge you 10 times as much. Anyone who's been to a hospital will see that in the billing. Let's go after that. These are bipartisan issues, but that has not been the appetite of the Congress. The Republicans can't talk about high premiums and not be willing to go after the costs underneath those premiums. And those costs are the insurance industry, hospitals, the drug companies. Those are the things we need to take on.
Quickly, let's see. Anybody got a question they want to...
So in terms of 21st century workforce development, I know both you and Hal Rogers have signed up for the Congressional App Challenge, so I commend you guys on that.
Right.
And I was curious so that's K through, or high school and below. I was curious if there has been any movement, or if you guys are doing any work on having Pell Grants or any kind of other support for programs like General Assembly, so that people can, instead of going to a 4-year institution, work on doing whether it's a boot camp or a 3-month program.
Can everybody get a question? Pell Grants, other issues that can assist?
For boot camp, like they do here at General Assembly, like a 3-month front-end web development, which would prepare you for a career here in San Francisco.
So Kevin McCarthy and I just passed a bill. It's my first legislation that's passed in Congress. It's called the Vet Tech Act. What it will allow is the GI money to be used by veterans to take tech courses. And to be used for a housing stipend and tech courses. In the past, the GI Bill could only be used to go to a college or a 2-year community college or 4-year degree, but you couldn't use it for Coursera or Udacity or NPower. Let me just give you a very brief history of the bill. So Kevin McCarthy has this idea, and he needs a lead Democrat to make it the sort of McCarthy Democrat bill. He sends it to 20 members of Congress who have tech in their district. And so I said, this is what I ran on, getting new jobs, tech jobs. Let's ask McCarthy if I can be the lead Democrat. It'll be a way of getting my first bill passed. And so my staff goes to McCarthy's office and says, Roe really wants to be on this bill. Can he be the lead Democrat? McCarthy's office says, sure, he can be the lead Democrat. So I said, how did we make that happen? He said, well, you're the only Democrat on the bill. And the reason I was the only Democrat originally is because there was all this sense, we can't do that. It's got to be an accredited college. It's got to be an accredited university. And then I worked with the minority staff, and we said, look, the workforce is changing. You got veterans coming back. They don't want to go to college for 4 years. They've driven tanks. They've led men and women in war. They need some credentialing. They don't need 4 years of college or 2 years of college. And finally, the minority staff actually came around. The bill passed unanimously through committee and ultimately was rolled into the GI Bill and passed unanimously in the House. So with that type of reasoning, I give that example, we could do the same thing with Pell Grants and other. We have to be more creative about the type of skills and training needed. And I'm we'll work with Hal Rogers on that.
Okay, let's do some, okay, quick, we just have time for
Sure. My question has to do with entrepreneurship. Our team has been spending a lot of time in Canada and outside of the US. Americans have no access to entrepreneurship grants. We don't have any access to research dollars, and it's really hard to get access to any kind of capital to be able to be in startups or small business. We were talking about venture capital, but most folks are doing a small business or a medium scale business, and so the idea of being able to have
Well, what's your question? Because he's got to put it around.
well, that's what I'm saying. Is there anything to help Americans with, grants
No.
for startups and small businesses?
I think we've got to do a few things. There's a small business grant that we can expand, and we should put the SBIR in every congressional district and make that more accessible. We've got to figure out how do we create more university towns across the country, because I think universities often have that ecosystem with angel investors and lending and opportunities. And I do think we need, in my view, Medicare for all, and taking healthcare out of the private sector so that people aren't concerned about losing their healthcare and they have some social safety net so they can take a risk as entrepreneurs.
Okay, I think they're giving me the sign.
All right.
If we just quick, real
Hey,
quick.
well, I was at a rally for healthcare in Walnut Creek this past weekend. Everybody was like 60 plus. Do you have any words of encouragement for people who are graduating from college coming into this new gig economy and they're not going to have health care? Why aren't they showing up? Could you encourage them to hit the streets and kind of help support the drive for health care?
Yeah, well, I think two things on that. One, we need to find new ways of communicating with that generation. That generation is on Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat. And we've got to figure out how do we reach those folks and inspire those folks. And by the way, I think that's the way to win. We've got to talk to the kids across this country. They get what's happening and they can go talk to their parents. One point on this, the president is obsessed with Apple manufacturing in the United States. And if they do, that's great, but there are 80,000 jobs at Apple. 80,000 jobs. There are 2 million app developers that are created because of Apple. Why are we not focused on those 2 million jobs and how we're going to get people prepared for those 2 million jobs? The young people, they understand this. We've got to get their voices engaged in the politics of the future to win.
Final thing, Nancy Pelosi should continue to be the House Minority Leader and the flag bearer for the Democratic Party.
Well, we're mid-season. She's the quarterback, and she will lead us to victory this season. But I'll tell you why. I mean, like the 49ers, they couldn't even. Someone said, "Who's their quarterback?" And I had to say Brian Hoyer because they kept changing. So you don't want to change. But she raises most of the money for the party. One of the people on her staff actually said the best thing. They said if someone wants her job, instead of going after her and criticizing her, just go do her job. Go start raising the money, go start recruiting candidates, go be out there, and you'll be the next in line. But let's not be firing at each other when we've got to be unified as a party and win back the House.
Very good.
To get the panel approved in conversations for 5 minutes, and we'll start right back up.